All right. So I'm recording this way earlier than normal. Reason I usually record like late at night is because my kid's asleep, my girl's asleep, and there's people like doing work on our house. We live in a guest house, and our landlord's like working on like the main property, so it's loud. But I'm just gonna do it anyway because if I wait till the end of the day, then I can't get as much content out. So I'm just going to start, like, who cares about the noise? I'm just letting you know there'll be some ambient sounds. Another thing is social media is just consuming me way, way too much. I understand that it's like it's necessary to, to be on social media to help promote some of my creative projects. Like there's about to be Wasting Talent, the Kindle version for $1 for a few days because I'm about to get paid for the first raffle that I did with Sinister, like I don't know 6-7 weeks ago. The 21st of April, I get that money. I'm going to file for the Paul Project, get the nonprofit status, and we're going to start making a mailing list and then sending out Narcan to everybody that's on that mailing list. So part of that promotion is I'm about to release the album Drug Stories for Truckers, but instead of like a physical copy, because we just can't figure out how to do it, and especially with vinyl, like I've tried everything. We're going to just put it like on iTunes and Spotify, other platforms like that. But any revenue that I get from that album or from the Kindle, not the paperback, but the Kindle and not the audio, just the Kindle version of Wasting Talent and the Drug Stories for Truckers, I'm donating all of that to Narcan, especially right now with everything that's going on with the pandemic. Narcan is like more important than ever. I'm finding that a lot of weird shit's going on social media. I'm getting attacked quite a bit. Maybe it's because I stopped answering comments on here, so now people go on my Instagram and Facebook. I'm not even going to accept anyone anymore, just because so many psychos have sent me friend requests. I was like, yeah, I'm like, I'm nice, I'm not like too cool for school where I won't accept a friend request. I guess Facebook is meant for you to actually know somebody. But for me, I look at it like any other social media, like Instagram. It's, if you want to be my friend on Facebook, sure. But people really take advantage of that. They try to call me, they get in arguments with me. Like I'll post political stuff, which I don't do on other platforms as much because I understand that that's divisive. And who the fuck wants to hear my political views? That's not why you watch me. You want to hear about butt fucking conga lines, sex riots, hot tan dudes jumping out of helicopters with scuba gear on, shit like that. But you don't want to hear about my political beliefs. What the fuck do I know? I've been to prison 3 times and I've been a junkie for 2 decades. But anyway, and then I'll post my opinion on Facebook. People I don't know in real life, this is always the people I don't know in real life, attack me. And I'm just like, that's cool to have an opinion, but don't attack me like that, like publicly on Facebook if we're friends. And I think that social media in general has just ignorized, that's not even a real word, but I think it's ignorized um, this generation, my generation, and then the one after. Generations that don't even know what it's like not to have the internet. We do everything in acronyms, LOL. Like we're probably going to start saying that out loud instead of laughing. Someone will say something and you just be like, LOL. So that's how like desensitized and dead we'll become inside from this digitalized avatar that we're all living in. And everything gets like really glossy and contrived, and you only present the image that you want people to think about you. It's ridiculous. You like get a bowling ball, get in like a bowling fucking uh stance and be like, hey babe, take a picture of me, I'm gonna post on Instagram and I'll hashtag bowler. And like it looks like on you're all good, and like you do your hair up and like you have this fierce bowler look on. It's whack. Like our generation, it's just becoming kind of bullshit. A few years ago, I quit watching television. I just got on some weird trip. Who knows why? I mean, probably not the marathon psychedelic drug use that I've done throughout my life, or all the times that I was in solitary confinement where I lost my brain. But a few years ago, I just came to the conclusion that television was stupefying me. It was like, I was being inundated with propaganda, just all sorts of weird shit. And I was like, ugh, I don't want to hear all this stuff, and I don't want to like be manipulated into one way of thinking. I feel the same way about anything, fringe YouTube shit. Like, I don't base my opinions off other people's interpretation of things, because reality is subjective. It's however we interpret it. And I'm thinking about doing the same with social media, although it's, required for what I do, because I have a creative profession and I'm self-employed, and I think I might just have someone manage my social media. I think I'm just going to stop altogether with well, not, with YouTube or Patreon, because that's my sources of income, but like Instagram, I spend so much time scrolling through shit and like just completely senseless memes and being like, oh my God, that's so funny. Then I'll like screenshot it, send it to my girl, and she'll just be like, huh. She'll like, we're in the same fucking room, but we're like texting each other memes. And, that's it. It's ridiculous. I want to focus on my family, and there's people making fake accounts for me on Instagram and on Twitter, and like pictures of my kid, and the caption will be like, can't wait to smoke crack with my dad. Attack me if you want. I put myself out there publicly, and yes, I talk about my son and I talk about my wife, but don't fucking post pictures of my kid. That's like pedophile behavior. That's disgusting. I in a million, like, I don't care. I would never do that. Like, someone else's child, that's over the line. There's rules. There's war rules. That's bullshit. The fuck. Oh, dude, this guy. It must mean that I'm getting better, or like getting a bigger fall. This guy's so bomb. Oh, let's make fun of him. Oh, let's post a picture of his kid. Yeah, he won't like that. Yeah, this is for being too bomb, bitch. Okay, so I don't record these anymore, so I have no idea how long this introduction is. I don't even give a shit, though. The people that like my stuff are probably still watching. There's probably people that have just fast forwarded because they just want to hear about my train wreck of a life. I will say one last thing. People always go, dude, you said it was Friday. It's a Thursday. Or how come when you post these videos you have 455 views? That's suspect, dude. You have these aren't real views. It's like, I guess I'm not doing a good enough job of advertising. Patreon, I record these videos like 4 to 6 days before it'll appear on YouTube. You get extra content, extra videos, pictures, dick shots, butthole shots. You get extra shot for, as low as $3 a month. You're getting early access to the content. So guess I just haven't been promoting it correctly. Patreon.com/Ryan Leone. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever. So I was talking to Jeff. He watched one of these videos. It's very common for people that know me in real life, IRL, IRL, that guy. In real life, people that know me, when they listen to my stories or when they watch the videos, they often correct me because I'm wrong on chronology. The number one thing that I screw up in stories is chronology, and I also sometimes forget really important details that would make the story better. So let me backtrack a little bit. And when the gay psychic had clearly set Jeff up, his parents had come in and they had taken his bud. And they took I got him a pipe that was like custom blown. It was from one of the top glass blowers in the world. It's like a $1,500 or $1,600 pipe. When I used to be his roommate, like that, I gave him that pipe to pay rent one month, and it was a custom. It's like it's irreplaceable. Nothing hits that well. It's like the best pipe in the world. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. So not only did they take his bud, they changed the locks at his condo and kicked him out. And he's like, well, what do you mean I'm kicked out? I'm going to be homeless or what? And, his dad was like, huh, we got to figure it out. So I forgot that's a very important part of this, because actually my parents took Jeff in for a couple days. And then finally, as I talked about in the last video, I went up to their house and I, used tact and diplomacy, and we actually got the bud back, and the gay psychic got booted. So it backfired on him. And now that dude wasn't at Jeff's condo anymore. He had like a week to get out of there or something. And, Jeff already said, hey, after this, if you can start coming up with rent money, you can move into his old room. So I actually had like an option to live somewhere if I could come up with the money, and I was convinced that I was going to hit the lotto second chance raffle or whatever that was. But I had no source of income except for my royalties. And like, that's when you smoke cigarettes, $200, $300 a month, whatever it was at a very low point. It does nothing. So, I was thinking of ways that maybe I could start making money. I started looking for jobs again. I wish I could get that furniture moving job, because that would have been perfect. It's a lot of money, and I would have made, I think he was charging, 1,100 or 1,200 for that condo. The pipe that I told you about, that was at a whole different place, but I think the room there was like $1,200. So I had it in my mind to try to come up with some money or try to get some sort of employment so that I could actually live with him. So I wouldn't be sleeping on park benches or sleeping in Kendra's car, abandoned houses, whatever the case. It was just a really miserable time. I was taking a lot of public transportation, the bus, and it just, everything that I did was like pretty challenging. And so around that time is when Zach and I's relationship kind of, I always miss this spot shaving, and it looks all crazy. I always do that because I shave in the shower without a mirror, and that's what I'm looking at. It's distracting me right now. It's crazy. So I'm just going to leave it just to be unique. So Zach and I's relationship started like forming. We had like a real bond, he's a visionary like me, and he was like the nicest guy in the world too. He was like a really, really nice, humble guy, and obviously very successful. He started paying for things for me, and he came up to Santa Barbara because we had some sort of arbitrary deadline for my connection with Spike TV. I forget what it was. This had to have been in like probably October of 2017. Maybe before that. It was probably September. It was like right after the summer. And whatever the deadline was, it was like 10 to 14 days from whenever we filmed that thing down in Santa Monica with Antwuan. So Zach started, like, the point is we had a very short window where we had to get this thing done to be able to pitch it to my connection at Spike. And not only Spike, this particular guy was a producer for Ridiculousness. And I think MTV does that show. I'm not sure. But, the point is like, he was very plugged in the television industry, and he was successful. And I'd been working with that guy for years and years and years. That was my boss when I was doing the media broker stuff, like in my early 20s. So Zach understood that we had to do it pretty fast. And he came up to Santa Barbara when, probably like on a weekend or something. And, he was living down in Long Beach, which is like an hour and 45 minutes from Santa Barbara, 2 hours, depends on traffic. And so he came up and he took me out to lunch. We met in person for the first time. He took me out to get some like pretty expensive, like barbecue lunch, it's like, $20 a plate. I mean, that's not expensive, but when you're homeless, that's like super luxury. And he was driving a brand new Beamer. that he was leasing. So, you know, it was obvious that he was really successful. And, you know, he appreciated the fact that I was a visionary as well. And I kind of presented some of the framework for the Resurrection show, you know, that I already told you about. Pre-existing millennial following. They've destroyed their life, drugs, alcohol, depression, incarceration, whatever the case. And the show would be called Resurrection. It would show them rise from the bottom that they had fallen to back up to where they originally were. You know, and my whole idea, or, you know, the reason that I thought that that was going to be a winning model was because I knew that everybody loved a comeback story. That's just how Americans are. Love a comeback story, but we also love a train wreck. So if you can accomplish both in the course of one season, and it's like goes from train wreck to comeback story, but it's, you know, there's dips, there's peaks and valleys. I think it would be very well received. And he was like totally into that. So we started, he had me write the sizzle. The sizzle was 7 minutes long. And I started writing it. Probably took me like 8 hours to write. And at that point, he drove me to my parents' house after we'd gone to lunch. And he was just like so much different than the typical dirt bags that I would bring to their house. You know, there's people that would have like tusk piercings, like sticking through like the bridge of their nose, and like teardrop tattoos. And they'd have like a machete in some sort of machete holster, I guess you would call it. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know, weird people would definitely come over. My dad would he got used to me always being around convicts. Every girl that came over looking like a stripper. I mean, he just got like kind of used to that. My social status had gone from like private school when I was in like junior high, like all the way down to like bona fide homeless. But still, in Santa Barbara, if you're homeless, you're doing better than a lot of people that have apartments in other parts of the country. Seriously, because it's just such a wealthy place and you can survive pretty easily there, just being homeless, just panhandling, and you can sleep at the beach. So he kind of was the diplomat that got my parents to kind of give me a second chance. Also, I was about to move into Jeff's and I had told my parents that. So they still would let me come over in the day. I just couldn't sleep there. They love Zach. You know, he was like one of those guys that really, you know, everyone has that friend that like everybody's parents loves this guy. I'm the opposite. Usually people's parents love me until they get to know me. You know, they're like, "Oh my God, you're just such a charming guy." They're like, "Oh, thanks." And then I'd like steal $40 from their pocketbook or something. You know, I do some scumbag, not really stealing. I was never really a thief. That was never really my thing. But a lot of times I think people would just get mad because I was a bad influence. You know, they'd find out that I was like a hardcore drug addict because I never was low key about it. You know, I was a bad drug addict in that sense because I think that I did it for like attention seeking, you know? They'd be like, "How are you?" I'd be like, "Not very good." "Why not?" "I just shot heroin." They'd be like, "Ooh, yeah, we have an appointment in an hour. It's probably not a good time for you to come in." And, you know, my friend would be like, "We don't have an appointment." Shh. They kind of just like shut the door in my face. Now, these are radical examples. Don't take these literal, but I'm just trying to paint some sort of picture, you know, in like a funny way, just so you can kind of see what kind of person I was or illustrate these particular situations. So at my parents' house, I wrote the sizzle, which was going to be 7 minutes long. And I wrote it, I think it was pretty well written. Now, Zach had been like a sponsored skater. He was a good skater growing up. So he was like super plugged in the pro skater world. He knew like all the top pros. And he's one of those guys. You see this a lot in skateboarding, like where people are good when they're younger and they get older and they either get on the business side of skateboarding, like running a shop, running a company. There's so many different facets of skateboarding, wheels, trucks, etc. Or they get into a lot of guys that grew up skating and that were good at it but didn't make a career out of it will kind of evolve into videographers, filmers. See that a lot, editors. And that's what he was. And he was just in a network of all people that were like-minded, and they were creating a lot of content, pilots for television shows. He had just signed a deal with some major network, the same people that did the show Catfish. Well, that was on MTV, but the same company that produced it had given him a deal for a pilot that he had shot about a blind skateboarder, which was like a really, really great idea and a really inspiring story. Well, that's amazing. Some guy went blind and then he didn't stop skating. He could still, I'm sure you've seen videos of this guy. I mean, how could you not respect and love seeing stuff like that? So he was on an upward trajectory, and he was hanging out in these kind of crowds where people were making content, a lot of YouTube stuff, but I didn't even know that I didn't know you could really make a career out of YouTube at the time. And he was running like he had just left a very big company that had a huge YouTube presence. And he was still doing consulting work for them. So he told me after I'd written the sizzle that the one problem that him and his friends had always had that were making content is they didn't have a real writer. He didn't realize how much a writer could be beneficial for the kind of content that he was creating. He would have some voiceover narration in some of the documentaries that he did, like one about Antwuan, one about Dirt Nasty, but it wasn't written by a professional writer. Therefore, it didn't have like the fluidity that it should have to make it pop. And I think I did a pretty good job on Antwuan Resurrection for the sizzle that I wrote. I put it up on Patreon, and a bunch of people have seen it and said that they liked it a lot. That's like the only version I know of that exists. And that wasn't even the final version. That was like maybe a few versions before the final. So I write it, and he starts showing me things that I had never even seen before. I worked for Spike in my early 20s, but all I did was sell media. I bought it, and then I sold it to them. And then I did it enough where they started giving me credits on top of money, and I started making good money with it. And I'd go to meetings as well. So I got to see the television industry a little bit, but I've been out of the loop for so long, and he was teaching me new stuff that I'd never seen, like a marketing deck. I didn't know what that was. And what that is it's like basically a presentation. If you're like on an iPad or a computer, it like scrolls down and it's like different. It's like almost like a slideshow, but each page is like images and graphs and basically pitches the whole concept in a very compelling way. And I never really knew anything about marketing decks. And as soon as he showed me, they were very effective. I was like, whoa, like I'm sure you can do damage with those. And like now that I've been doing all this stuff for some years with a focus, like that's not even like an advanced part of it. That's just a standard. There's so much other stuff like a show Bible, stuff like that. It's just like way on like a way higher level. And he started doing like market research projections about what the built core audience would look like. We came up with insane numbers. Core built an audience of like 7 million. This can be a primetime show. So we made this whole sizzle, and we made this marketing deck, and we also made and I wrote it. I wrote that. We had the marketing deck, and now we had to put a sizzle together. And that's the reason that Antwuan had told me about this guy, Zach, from the beginning. Because, oh my God, dude, my note is so annoying. I need to get surgery. I'm going to. It's ridiculous. Ever since I kicked subs, it's out of control. It's really, really bugs me. So he had amassed a bunch of footage throughout the years of Antwuan. So we already had archival footage. We filmed that little bullshit interview that I did down in Santa Monica, but really we didn't get that good of footage there. So with the existing archival that he had, and with my writing, he assembled a team of editors that started working on it immediately while we were in Santa Barbara. He was there for a couple of days, and he got me Airbnb the whole time. And he started seeing like what kind of scumbag I am. Like we'd be driving around in his BMW and I'd be like, stop. He'd be like, dude, what? And he'd like slam on the brakes. We'd be like, not on like a freeway. We'd be on like some like commercial street or something. Slam on the brakes. He'd be like, what? And I just like open the car door and I'd like run to a trash can that I saw like a bunch of scratchers sticking out of. And I just start like scooping them out of the trash, like all like aggressively, at that point, no shame, there was like, there'd be like food stains, like crusty food on the fucking scratcher. And I bring it back. I'd be like, dude, this is a $50 one. This one's really good. And he's just like, why do you do that? And so I started explaining to him, I was like, there's a mathematical certainty that you're going to hit a jackpot if you do this enough. And like, this is my job. I just haven't been paid yet. He's like, dude, you don't have any money? I was like, no. He's like, where do you live? And I'm like, kind of wherever I can stay. Because when he came and he got me there, the Airbnb, I was telling him that I couldn't stay at my girl's place, that her and I were fighting. So I got him to get me an Airbnb. And he thought that he just assumed that I lived there and I was going to go back there. And I started telling him what the real situation was. I was like, oh, no. I'm like straight up homeless. I'm about to move in with Jeff, but I've been like literally sleeping on park benches, like looking for refry cigarettes. Like, ooh, look at the girth on that one. Just spark it up. And this shit was like mortifying for him, he'd like have Lysol and like spray down the leather of his BMW when he thought that I like wasn't looking. I'd like get out of the car and I'd see like obsessively scrubbing the seat. I probably smell like straight shit too, because I'm a cigarette smoker. That with body odor and God knows what else is just bad. And I started explaining to him the whole thing about my therapist, and I could go back to prison at any time. And right from the gate, he was like, listen, you go to prison, I will make sure that your kid is taken care of financially. I already see you as an asset. The same thing that we're doing with this sizzle, you can do with like thousands of concepts. You can just be a writer for me, like for a freelance capacity. Basically, he was giving me employment. And I also told him about Jeff's place. I think it was 1,200. I was like, yeah, I'm trying to come up with that. He's like, done. I'll pay for it. I was like, wow, really? And I was really appreciative. His video editing crew put together the sizzle in like 3 days. And the stuff that they were sending was really fantastic shit. It looked really professional and it was well written. And we had like paid a professional voice actor to narrate it. And it came out really well. So around this time, I wasn't talking to my ex-wife, uh, except for like divorce stuff here and there. No casual talk. Yeah, that one. People get so mad when I say it. Oh, it's so annoying. So I wasn't really talking to her, but I knew that I had to give her some sort of paperwork. Like I told her, like, all you have to do is print this. Like, go to the court website, californiacourt.gov or whatever it is, and just print the divorce forms and send it to me. I don't have a printer. So she wouldn't do it. So anyway, when Resurrection is done, and I'm gonna get back to her. I'm gonna get back to her in a second. When Resurrection is done, like it came out really good. And I send it via Dropbox to my connection over at Spike. And he watches it. So, preferably you want to have a pitch meeting where you bring it on your iPad, you have a projector, put it on the wall, do your marketing deck. It's a whole pitch. And I've pitched probably a dozen shows since this point using the same strategy. And like, that would be preferable, but he didn't have time. And he's like, look, I'm going to be out of the country for like the next 7 or 8 weeks. The only way that I can really do anything is if you just just email it to me and let me watch it. And he was a pretty honest guy, I'd known him for a long time. So I knew that there was validity in what he was saying. So we send it to him. And, Zach and I are like anxiously awaiting his phone call back. We think for sure it's a slam dunk, just because of how well crafted it was. And, it was a good idea for basic reality television, and it had good it had good social implications, and it also just had a premise that I think was generally positive. So he ends up calling us back, and like, I'm with him. I'm like, oh, he's calling. And like, I think Karina was there, and like, we're all huddling over my iPhone, put it on speaker, expecting to get good news, I already have like a party hat on. I'm just like, dude, we're going to rage it after this, homeboy. He's like, yeah. So we're watching it, or we're listening to the phone, and he says, hey, really, really good editing, great writing, all around great sizzle. I don't think that he can carry a show by himself. I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, that's just not the way that network television is doing things anymore. Look at Intervention, other shows like that. I think he cited that as an example, something like that. And he's like, you need parallel storylines happening at the same time. And he's like, so do me a favor, find 2 more people that are similar with the same concept that's in your deck about pre-existing millennial following, some sort of falling out, and then, get back to me when you've done all that, and present it to me with that, because that would be a stronger sale. He's like, if you had 2 more strong personalities, interesting stories that you could intertwine into one cohesive sizzle, I think you really have something here. But until you do that, I can't work with this. All right. Going to Tokyo. Check in with me in 7 to 8 weeks or whatever it was. And we were so disappointed, Now, he wasn't the only contact that I had. I had a number of contacts down in LA. And so did Zach. He knew a bunch of television people. So between us, we got a number of meetings down in LA. I didn't have a car, so he actually paid for me to take an Uber down to his place. And I met his girlfriend, who was like some sort of, new age hipster. And right off the bat, I could tell she didn't like me. She would just like, I'd be smoking a cigarette on their balcony. Now, he smoked cigarettes too, so it wasn't the cigarette. I'm sitting there smoking, and she just comes out, puts her hands on her waist, and she's like, he didn't tell me that you were coming. And I was like, oh my God, what did the gay psyche get to you somehow with this sonar fucking dolphins talk? Exactly like him. Sounded just like him. He didn't tell me that you were going to be here. It's the first time I met her. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Hey, I'm Ryan. And she's like, I'm Zach's girlfriend. She didn't tell me a name. I have my hand out to shake, and she's just like, aren't you some sort of drug addict? I was like, no, I think you heard, just crack. And she just goes inside. And then I just hear yelling. I feel like the kid at the bottom of the stairwell, like hugging my knees, like feeling bad about myself because I think that mom and dad are fighting over me. So anyway, so I end up sleeping there. And remember, I'm shooting Suboxone at the time. And so I like have to wake up in the morning, and I like go in the bathroom, and I'm like mixing up my shot, and she knocks on the door. Is anyone in there? I was like, yeah, it's me. It's like, what are you doing? I don't even know this person. So awkward. I'm like, I'm taking a big old shit. She's like, the water in there doesn't even work. You need to come out. You can scoop it with the little plastic shovel that we have for the kitty litter. I'm like, oh, this is a nightmare. This is a nightmare because I have no shit to scoop. What am I supposed to do? I'm straight busted. And and Zach doesn't know that I shoot Suboxone at this point. I finished doing my shot. I said, okay, give me a minute. I'm constipated. So I finished my shot. There's like blood rolling out of my out of like the side of my elbow. You remember at the time I'm only shooting up in my legs, but I just couldn't. I like was running out of spots in my legs, and I found some like obscure one, like But the problem with it, it was like on the arm, and it like bled like really badly. So I come out, and she has like latex gloves on, and she's seriously holding a kitty litter scooper, and she's like, let's just move it. Let's move the what did she call it? I forget what she some like official word for shit that's like very obscure. I forget what it was. It was like one that you hardly ever use. Um and she goes and she looks in the toilet, and she's like, you lied to me. And I'm like, I didn't lie to you. Hey, Zach. He's like, yeah. And he was like really nice, totally different than her. So I go and I talk to him, and she's like, he's doing drugs in our bathroom. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I go up to him. I go, hey, dude, I was jerking off to porn on my phone. It's just how I start my day. And he looks at me. It's like, which is weird, right? I mean, I don't know this guy very well, and I'm telling him how I have to start my day by masturbating in his bathroom. But I was like, you want me to shine in the meetings? Is that correct? He's like, yeah, 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 yeah. I was like, okay. I felt like it was better to tell him that than drugs. He's like, dude, just go wait in my car. So he gives me the keys to his car. And again, I hear them yelling. So I'm waiting in his car. He finally comes down, and he's just like, man. I was like, are you okay? Is she upset? He's like, oh, no, 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 it's fine. But I could tell that it wasn't fine. And, that would be the start of like a lot of complications between us, which ultimately ultimately led to the bridge getting burned at the very end. But so we went to a number of meetings. We went to one in Burbank. We met with Vice. I think that was in Venice Beach. I don't know. We went all over. We did like Vice, couple smaller production companies that had good relationships with major networks. And every time that we went to one of these meetings, we pitched, with the marketing deck. In the marketing deck, one of the slides was all of our bios, and it had my like standard bio. Ryan Leone is a novelist that wrote his first book while serving a 5-year term in federal prison for hanging out with Mexicans. No, it said for being in a Mexican drug cartel. I mean, if the feds are going to sensationalize my case, why shouldn't I? I did the time for it. That's what it said on paper. I'm going to run with that because it's honestly helped my career more than just being like, yeah, I was on like a conspiracy for 8 ounces. International drug cartel. That's what they said. That's their words. So, at every pitch meeting that we went to, respectively, they would be like, well, what about your story? Like, what happened with it? Like, they were more curious about me because I'd like written a book, and I talked, the film deal was on there, and it just like, we framed it in a way where it made me intriguing. So every meeting that we went to across the board, they were telling us that they were more interested in my story than his. And, and Zach's like, what do you think of that? I was like, a show about me being a junkie? Be pretty boring. I mean, you just kind of film me looking at my shoes for 3 or 4 hours, once in a while getting up to try to take a shit and just kind of groaning in pain because I'm constipated. That'd be season 1. I mean, like, I didn't see a show. I didn't see how at that point in my life we could make things episodic. And he said, no, what about a feature-length documentary? And I was like, I don't know. That might embarrass my parents, might be exploitative. That's how I thought then. Now I look at it as more of like a protest. It's more like subversive, at least to me. Like, I'm stigmatized with felonies, hard to get regular employment. So I may as well capitalize on my life experience because it was pretty abnormal life. And I think I have a specific way of telling it that I think a lot of people can't do. So why not? Why not monetize it? But back then, I looked at all that stuff as very sacred. And I didn't realize how much archival footage we had either. You know, like the amount of footage that we have for the documentary is insane. It's like my entire life was pretty much groomed for this. So the seed was planted in my mind that, you know, maybe I'd be into a documentary. Every time I was going to court, it was looking bad. And while I was down in LA, he was going to give me a ride. He was going to give me a ride. I don't remember. He was giving me a ride somewhere so that I could get home. Maybe the train station. Yeah, it was the train station in Van Nuys. That's what it was. So he was going to take me to the train station in Van Nuys so that I could go home. I went down there a few times, but on this particular evening, this is what happened. I get a phone call out of nowhere from my ex-wife. You know, I such a drug addict. That person. And she's crying. And I'm like, and listen, regardless of how much shit, not just her, anybody in my life has put me through, one of my probably best and worst attributes at once is the fact that I forgive too easily. And I'm empathetic. I am empathetic. If I didn't have, I'm so pathologically narcissistic. I'm so narcissistic that if I like, empathy is the one thing that saves me from being a full-blown sociopath. Sociopaths lack the ability to have empathy because all they can think about is themselves, how hot and tan they are at that moment. Oh, damn, looking blotchy today, huh, boy? Cold 7. You know, that's like pathological narcissism, but then, you know, there's also that where that's literally all you can think about, you know? And I always had empathy. So she's calling me crying and I'm like, hey, what's up? And she's like, I'm so sick. And I'm like, that is an understatement. And she's like, no, I need Suboxone. I'm kicking Suboxone. I was like, okay, what do you expect me to do? And she's like, can you mail me some? And I'm like, where are you? She was in like somewhere in the San Fernando Valley by the train station. Coincidentally, she called me right at that moment. And I'm like, you know, I'm actually down in LA right now. And she's like, really? You have subs on you? I was like, yeah. I was like, I can give you like 10 of them or something. She's like, how much? I'm like, just, you know, but on the condition that you sign the paper, you know, and so like at least I'm getting something out of it. She's like, yeah, no, that's all I have to do. Oh my God. I was like, yeah, no problem. So I tell him, hey, plans deviated a little bit. I need to go drop these off and I need to print this form out so I can get it signed so I can divorce her once and for all. And he's like, bro, I'm so beat right now. He's like, how about I take you to wherever she is and then I pay for like a Lyft or Uber back to Santa Barbara, which is like $200, $300, whatever. And I was like, no, you don't have to do that. And he's like, no. You need that paper. Just go for it. So I end up getting dropped off in some residential neighborhood and in Reseda. And like she's like, okay, this is my address. I'm like, all right, cool. I had the red backpack on, famous homeless red backpack. And I had 10 subs that I had taken out of my backpack and I had them in my hand. Drops me off and I looks like a normal suburban house. No big deal. And then I realized it's not the right address, but he had already left. And I was standing in front of the wrong place. So I'm like looking at the curbs for different addresses. And I see these two fairly big white guys, skinheads for sure. Remember all that? You never see him in captivity, and you never see him in the free world, only in captivity. When do you ever see one with a swastika on their neck? Right here. And it's like one of the one and only times that I ever saw that. They're wearing like the Dickie shorts and like the high white socks, even though they hate Mexicans, but they want to dress like they're Southsiders, you know? And they're sitting there smoking a cigarette, Marlboro Reds, of course. And they're mad dogging me, you know? They're straight up giving me bad looks. It's not in my head. I'm not on any sort of upper. And I just kind of look at them, and then I stop looking because I learned in prison that don't do that. Don't make eye contact because then it brings on problems. You know, just stay in your lane. I'm texting her. I'm like, where are you? And she's like, I'll be out in a second. I'm like, okay. Finally, she comes out the front door. So this is the house. She's got these two skinheads. And I'm like, fuck. I already know what's going on right here. It's all bad for me. And so she comes out and she goes, like, she looked like shit, by the way, like mascara running from when she was crying. She's wearing like an oversized Wayne's World 2 t-shirt. I don't even know where you get something like that. But she, you know, and she's wearing like these pink socks with no shoes on. She's like, hey, thank you so much. But she's like, damn, you look good. And I was like, so do you. And she's like, well, hey, check it out. See those guys over there? I'm like, the Nazis? She's like, yeah, they want to hurt you. And I was like, what do you mean they want to hurt me? And she's like, they know what you did to me. I'm like, what I did to you? What the fuck? Right as we're talking, you hear the guys go, hey, what's up, bro? How are you? And I look up. They're a lot bigger than me. I'm 5'6". My red backpack, I swear, makes me lose a couple inches because it's so big. Hey, what's up, bro? And we'll get into the rest of this story next time. Thank you guys. Stay safe. Wash your hands. If you don't have Pepsi or a cop, Palabra.